Greetings, nerds and Star Trek fans. This is Will Polk, host of Cine Nerd Presents Blur Trek. Thank you so much for joining me on this live stream tonight, as I'm going to be talking about the topic that all Star Trek fans have been talking about over the last few days since Friday is the new movie called Star Trek Section 31. Yes, it finally did drop, and we are going to talk about it here tonight. So, here in the live chat, doing a live review of this film, and I hope you can please join with me and share your thoughts on the film. I'm going to be very honest about my opinion of what worked, what didn't work. Not going to do a beat by beat, frame by frame review. There's plenty of people who've done that. I assume by this point you've watched the film if you're watching this live stream. So so looking forward to hearing your thoughts about it, and as I share mine this evening. So let's just talk about this movie, Section 31. So, as you know, this is a spinoff of Star Trek Discovery. Of course, the original Section 31 was a organization that was first seen in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, but this was a spinoff of Discovery. Originally, it was going to be a series that was going to be headlined by Michelle Yeoh. It was but of course, due to the pandemic and the writer's strike and several other things, it just basically was announced, I think, around 2019, but then was put on the shelf for a little bit for it to be developed. And then, of course, we know what happened after that. Michelle Yeoh did go on to win an Oscar for everything, everywhere, all at once, and of course that then gave Paramount the idea. Let's definitely do this movie. So I guess just to get it off right off the start, does this movie stick the landing? And unfortunately, I have to say, no, it didn't. Not to say that it didn't hide its good pieces and stuff, and I will get into that because, I think has been at this point just a pile on, quite frankly, of a lot of negativity out there. But at the same time, there were some good things about this movie, and I'll break those down. But also, I'll be very honest about some things that didn't work so well in Section 31. So. My initial thoughts are, as far as yes, Star Trek was trying to do something different here, and whenever I watched this film, and that's one of the things that many people have raised as a defense of this film, which is Star Trek trying to do something different. I understand that, but if you're going to do something different, then don't just be a almost beat by beat regurgitation in some regards of the 1996 Mission Impossible film. When I watched it, I even kind of joked. I was like, "Is this dollar store Mission Impossible?" Because whenever it started, it definitely had a lot of those elements. It had, with that we saw in that Mission Impossible film, and so clearly it was inspired by that. Of course, I've heard a lot of other, you know. Comparisons to the Suicide Squad from the James Gunn version, and as well as the original one done by David Ayer, of course, Guardians of the Galaxy. So yeah, those influences are all there, as well as many others. But let's get into the film and just give you my overall thoughts as far as why I think, just the impression of Section 31. And of course, I did see a lot of the negative reviews on Thursday and Friday, as the review embargo was lifted, and I saw the tomato scores. And as of right now, on Monday night, as I do this live stream, we got, I think it's at 22% as far as the critic score, and around 17 or 18% or so of the popcorn meter score, which is now what Rotten Tomatoes calls their new audience score. Now, people have their feelings about Rotten Tomatoes and stuff. So, so I don't base my decision solely on that. I saw some positive reviews out there from reviewers that I trust and respect, as far as giving honest opinions about about the things that they are writing reviews about, and also saw the negative reviews. But when when I saw the trailer, I mean, if you go back, the internet never forgets. And if you go back and look at my reaction at San Diego Comic Con when the trailer dropped, I put out. I'll even almost did clip it out to like put it into the video tonight, which is I thought that the trailer looked pretty dope. I was like, okay, Star Trek's trying to do something different, and I did have a good thought about the film. So I went into this, even with all the stuff swirling in the atmosphere, I went into it with a good mind. But like I said, honestly, whenever you do watch the film, you can really see where they really did a job of trying to translate a 10 episode series into an hour and a half film. And really, when you look at the what the source, the things that the elements they had in the story, I will say that I think if it had been a full blown series, it probably would have been a good. I don't want to say great, but I think it would have been maybe a very good series and would have been enjoyable and probably maybe it would have gotten renewed for a second season. Who knows? But whenever you watch this film, and especially when you see the transitions in within the film, you can really see those elements where it was, trying to break, trying to mishmatch a 10 episode series into a feature length film, and it was, and then as things progress, you could really see the cracks in that foundation. And I think, and it definitely caused some suffering as far as some of the character development with some of the supporting characters. It also was as far as the pacing, I think, many things about it, you could see those elements from where they were trying to convert the series into a film. As I said at the beginning here, I did feel like this was, in many ways, as far as some of the elements of the plot, were very reminiscent of the 1996 Mission Impossible film, where in this Section 31, you had a redemption arc as far as just trying to, with Giorgio, whereas at least in the Mission Impossible film back in '96, Tom Cruise's character Ethan Hunt was framed for, and he was trying to do a redemption arc in that film. But also I think other things about the film that was kind of didn't settle as well was like the Suicide Squad. It definitely was. They introduced all these characters, and then it just sort of they didn't flesh them out to the place where I wanted to like really feel for them and care for them. But again, that's sort of the overall things. Another thing that really stuck out to me with this film was how they retconned Section 31 from how it was first introduced in Deep Space Nine. So, whenever this organization was first introduced in DS9, it was basically it was a morally complex organization that was sanctioned in the original Starfleet Charter as Article 14, Section 31, which did allow for extraordinary measures to be taken in times of extreme threats. I don't feel like they really, they retconned it here just to make it look like you know, they kept some of those elements from the original DS9, and especially the part of them having not been able to work in Federation space and not be a part of start officially part of start the Federation and Starfleet, so they could have plausible deniability if any of the operatives were captured and stuff. So they did keep those kind of parts, but I do feel like they missed out on some of the moral ambiguous stuff that the organization has, because, I mean, quite frankly, especially when you look at Captain Garrett's character, Lieutenant Garrett, I should say, as far as being the straight arrow one, you're supposed to keep them in between the lines. I never felt like this organization was really that organization that Section 31 was supposed to be the ones who paint outside the lines and really and morally ambiguous and those kind of things. I mean, quite frankly, we saw Ben Sisko and DS9 and many other characters do some things that were quite frankly more morally questionable and ambiguous. I mean, hell, whenever she says we don't do when Garrett says we don't do assassinations, I'm just like, well, look at Renak and in the pale moonlight. I mean, so so for them, the threat, and the um agency being like one that paints outside of numbers and stuff, I never really felt that the film really conveyed that. And then other things that, that it didn't feel like the film did feel more like the 1970s Roger Moore, James Bond films where, it was the camp was super high. And I'm okay with camp. I mean, Star Trek has, over 900 hours of film and TV and shows and movies and stuff. Camp is part of Star Trek. It's there and all, but again, as people try to say this is Star Trek trying to do something different here, I'm like, yeah, it's not that they're really doing anything extremely different here. I mean, I've seen some of the things that they were trying to attempt in this film in other parts of Star Trek. So, so when I hear that defense of the movie coming out there, it just kind of falls flat for me. But because I've seen it in other places, and then of course the villain was completely predictable, telegraphed the whole thing as far as what it was from the outset. And I felt that was not did not help the story at all. And of course, there's the usual MacGuffin, the godsend, God in, or whatever the hell they were calling it. But where that I have to admit, I did kind of chuckle a little bit when they were having that little banter in the desert there when they were trying to figure out what's this called. But at the end of the day, again, we need to end these tropes of Earth being or the Federation being, some grand galactic thing. Sometimes, just having these little weird MacGuffins like that, it's just lazy storytelling. And so let's find something that has more stakes, for these characters. I mean, we had some characters disposed of quickly in these films, but again, in this film, but we didn't have, there's no emotional character, ties to them or anything like that. So it's like, okay, yeah, so you're killing these characters off as soon as you introduce them. It's just like, okay, no biggie. There's no emotional stakes there or anything like that. So now, and then, there's also the piece of my overall thoughts. And as far as um, let's just talk about Giorgio and in the attempt to give her a redemption arc. And to me, that arc fell completely flat. This is someone who was a genocidal dictator. Let's not forget that. And I know they were trying to make her reimagine this character as a anti-hero in this film, but to me there was nothing that was done that justifies that. I think if you really want to see how they've as far as a redemption arc or how they've had this character of Giorgio grow, then I would suggest you go back and see how this character was introduced in the first season of Star Trek Discovery. See how this character grew over season 2 of that series, and then of course having to leave in the third season of the show because she got too far from her timeline. So to me, that was the whole, I guess, especially when you look at the beginning and how, and especially when they had the title card at the beginning, as far as as I was noted, the Mission Impossible type of intro that the film had, that they made the point that she was, committed genocide and showed her. I think that was the detonation of the Klingon Empire that was in the Terran Empire universe, in the Mirror universe. And so when you have that, and then you have all of them sitting around at the end of the film, having drinks around the bar and stuff, and trying to make her seem like a redeemed character. Unless again, this was a genocidal ruler and committed very horrible crimes. So I don't feel like this film really did a good job of justifying. It wasn't an earned moment there at the end of the film where they're all feeling good and stuff about each other. In fact, I feel like in some regards they just wiped away some of the things that they did prior in Star Trek Discovery. And another thing too, I think, as far as his overall thoughts of this film, is the timeline. I mean, I know it was set in the lost era of Star Trek. So the lost era, for folks who are new to Star Trek, is that period between the last film of the original crew with Captain Kirk and the beginning of the Next Generation. So that was where this film was set. If you weren't sure about where in the timeline it was, but those are just some overall thoughts. But let me get to some of the things that I did like about the film, and then I'll get back into some things that didn't work so well. So let's just give credit where credit's due. The opening sequence of this film, I have to say, was very good. It drew me in. It really did. When we see the young Giorgio going back to her home planet in the Terran Empire, uh, beating up with her family. They were asking about the Hunger Games, Squid Game. She was triumphant. It was down to her and San, and then and then we see what transpires with her, basically, ending all attachments and murdering her family, and then rising up to taking out having San be her eternal servant and stuff, and of course the very cool you know image of the Terran Empire coming down and all the folks beaming off the ship and stuff, and seeing how she became Emperor Jojo. Thought that was very good, and I have to say the actress who played young Philippa just nailed not only Giorgio but just nailed Michelle Yeoh. I thought she did a tremendous job in the first 8 minutes of this film, giving us something to care about with this character. Of course, as I noted, Michelle Yeoh is she definitely brought her A game. Too bad the material wasn't there to support that, but I will say that I thought that there were elements of Star Trek in there, as far as like dropping Easter eggs and stuff. I mean, there was one that I'll flag here now as far as Virgil, and I'll get into the bad about why if you're going to have these hardcore deep cuts in Star Trek, you need to explain them and stuff. But also another good part of the story was they did maintain the DS9 elements of Section 31, which does allow for plausible deniability for the organization. So that was a good element, I thought, as far as the story, as with having Section 31, um, you know, being that clandestine, super secret organization that we all thought that that we are familiar with and stuff. So I thought that was a good element that they did have, and it did keep that consistent. And also, as I noted before, just the having a story set in the Lost period, that was a plus for me, because that is a period of Star Trek that we haven't seen much about on screen. I know there's been a lot of books during that era, but as far as any live action or even animation or anything like that, the Lost era between the end of the Enterprise A run and Picard's crew on the Enterprise D. That's a span of almost 70 plus years where we don't have many stories other than just a few one-offs here and there, and it's just some dialogue about things that happened during that time period, such as the Tillman incident with the Romulans and other things like that. So it was really cool to see a story placed in that era. And then the other plus is we had two Academy Award winners, both with Michelle Yeoh and also Jamie Lee Curtis. And so that was pretty cool, having those characters of those actresses in this film, and you could add to the cachet of giving us some heft, I guess, as far as just star power and that kind of thing. So those were the things I liked about um, the film. Now transitioning over to what didn't work so much, I guess the bad, if you want to call it that, the pacing. Again, like I said earlier, in my overall faults, you could really see how after those 8 minutes, they really really the pacing and the editing and everything really showed how they were trying to like synthesize a 10 episode series into an hour and a half movie. And it's very unfortunate too, because I know there were two women who were original script writers for this, and then they got moved off the project, and then they brought in Craig Sweeney to redo the project. And I feel like in many regards, he basically, the work that was done on this in the script was just like, okay, let's just take pieces here, pieces here, pieces here, throw it in chat GPT, spin it around, and see what we can get come out of it. And I understand we had the strikes, we had COVID. This film was, you know, as I said, it was greenlit way back, I want to say in 2019 or something like that. So so it did go into development hell for a little bit. But whenever it was very clear that this was almost like a corporate cash grab, trying to capitalize on Michelle Yeoh's Oscar win, and Jamie Lee Curtis's Oscar win too, given that she's also in this film, even though it was just a more of a, just a little voiceover there at the beginning, when she sets up things with the introduction of the Section 31 Impossible Mission Force. And then of course we saw her there at the end of the film. But that there were some definite plot threads, things that were, seemed that you, I guess, listening to some of the interviews and reading some of the interviews about how they tried to restructure it and elements from the story that they tried to put in there. I get it, but you had a lot of time, and sometimes it would have been better, at least in my opinion. Yeah, you want to capitalize on the popularity of a actress. Totally get it. I don't fault them at all. I know this is a passion project also for Michelle. She stuck to her obligations with the contract, to do this, and she was really, really gung ho about doing this film, and she really loves this character, and she's said that many times. So I get that, but at the same time, I mean, just do some good care to, like, I don't know, if do a table read, something, just to see, like, oh, whenever, and maybe when it got into the editing bay is where went sideways. I don't know where it went sideways, but somewhere along the lines it did, and it really, the film suffered for it. So it just really felt stitched together, really felt cobbled together, and it really undercut what could have been a very, very solid film, given that we haven't had a Star Trek film since Star Trek Beyond in 2015, 16, 15. It's been a long time. So 2014, I think. But anyway, yeah, it's been a long time since we've had any type of Star Trek film. So for this one to be the first outing out, you really should, like, just nail it. And also, for many people, this is their first encounter of Star Trek at all. And so, if you're, thinking you're going to get these, bang bang, high energy, and then even the energy in this film wasn't that high, but Mission Impossible-esque, Guardians of the Galaxy-esque type of thing. I mean, like I said, Star Trek, people they take chances all the time. So to me, that defense of this film, saying, oh, they're trying to do something creatively different or something like that, rings hollow to me in some regards, because Star Trek has always taken chances with stories. I mean, hell, we just saw in Strange New Worlds a musical. So I mean, this, so don't you got to come with me with something more than that. The other thing I thought that, as I touched on in overall thoughts, is just Giorgio's growth. I thought that the character in this film was really, it's almost like they had just not referenced anything, the growth that this character had from what we saw from the first season of Discovery, when we first were introduced to her in the Mirror Universe, into her end, when she was encountered the Guardian of Forever in season 3 of Discovery. I feel like this film just kind of just glossed over those kind of things. I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but I don't think there was a bit of dialogue referencing anything that really had transpired in there. And then also, I just never understood one, how does she end up on the space station, as as far as this their cover thing? And maybe if they had kept it as a series, it probably was fleshed out as far as how she ended up from the 32nd century, from Star Trek Discovery, and then coming back to the 24th century. So, but I wish that, given how much, exposition they had in this damn movie, they could have at least given us at least a line of dialogue to like set that up, why she's here. And I felt like that was a weakness of the story. And then also when, Alok comes there to like recruit her and all that, of course there was a very ham-fisted, like, introduction that they did with all the characters and stuff. But also, I never felt like, um, there was a good, clean, like, explanation for why she all of a sudden wants to go along with this Scooby Doo gang that she's can clearly, like, sniff out that they are like they may be like supposed to be elite, or like, or again, maybe again, this is sort of the elements that they were trying to do, like the Suicide Squad or like Peacemaker, if you've seen that movie, TV show. Um, as far as it's supposed to be an elite team, but this was like the Scooby Doo gang as far as these operatives, especially, whenever they're trying to like set them up. So, again, that was, I just didn't know, understand her motivations for wanting to do this. And then of course they do have the ham-fisted way of like, introducing this MacGuffin with the other person from the mirror universe, as far as bringing this device to the godsend to the station and all that. But I mean, of course, it's the introduction of the villain. Again, I talked about that earlier. Completely telegraphed. I mean, as soon as the guy showed up in the mask and walking through there, I was just like, oh yeah, that's sad. I mean, I didn't say it out loud, but when I was watching my wife, but I was just like, yeah, I saw this coming from a mile away. So again, nothing that really set up a good villain twist. So that was another thing that kind of made that was a demerit to me. Also, the use of contemporary language. I mean, it's a Star Trek. I mean, here, meh, and like friends with benefits and all that stuff. I'm not a prude or stick in the mud or anything like that. But you know, it does. Again, one of the things about Star Trek is, or just any good sci-fi, when it's in another other world, you don't want to use like contemporary language, and that kind of sets it apart from just being just another average you know TV show or movie or whatever. So I felt like that was something that did kind of stick out to me as far as a quibble. Yeah, it's a nitpick for sure. I mean, I will freely admit, but again, I think I just can't see how that really added much to the story, having contemporary using contemporary slang and language and stuff like that. Come up with something for the 24th century. That's always, to be slang and that kind of thing like that. I think that would have just reminded us that it keeps you in that universe. Whereas if you use contemporary language, it takes you out. But I'll move on from that point. And also the score. I mean, I think there are some times that the score, Jeff Russo does a great job, as far as his music, and he's done pretty much, I think, most of these more recent series. I know Michael Giacchino has also done some work, but he, there were some points there where I felt like it just felt generic, and also tried to, sometimes I thought some of the songs and stuff kind of remind me of the songs from the Kelvin universe scenes in Star Trek 2009 from the bar and stuff. But yeah, but that was some thoughts as far as the score, and then the visuals and stuff, and some of the cinematography and direction I just felt was it didn't feel cinematic, and it felt, I mean, quite frankly, there's been some of the TV shows have felt, as far as in the new Trek, felt more cinematic than what we saw in this film. Let's see, we got got a couple of things here in the chat, so let me break it up. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you doing so. Let's see, we have a transit engineer. I've been a major Star Trek fan since 1970s, and watching the 1960 show as a science fiction space film is not related to Star Trek in any way. Also, we have Mike Case. The MacGuffin in this movie had an oddly circular pattern. It could only be activated by by a person the bad guy was actively running away from. Good points there. Yeah, I completely agree. Then also, I think we had a chat from earlier. It's not bad at all. There are a lot of bandwagon BS going on, and again, like I said, I think art's subjective, and I'm not going to say you know some comments are good, bad, in between. Everybody has their tastes. This film clearly worked for a lot of people. I've seen comments in a lot, out there in social. A lot of folks really enjoyed this film, but but for a lot of us, this just didn't work. And like I said, I'm trying to share just beyond just like, oh, it sucks. I do want to articulate why, the things I found that were lacking in this film. So going to speaking of which, just going through the plot. I think the as I noted before, and I don't want to beat this horse too much. The structure of this thing definitely does seem like a television show, and and as I said before, the opening was very, 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 very good as far as drawing you in. But after we get that initial reintroduction as far as Giorgio and how she became the empress of the Terran Empire, then it did become just a very basic, just a carbon copy, just by the numbers action film, or that was very not very inspired and very relies on a lot of the good, a lot of the tropes that unfortunately a lot of the more recent Star Trek, even quite frankly, I will even say the as much as it pains me to say it, even the classic ones sometimes had the Earth or the universe in peril um, um, trope there as far as part of the story structure. But I think the difference is, we, at least with these with other films and other things, we by the time we had those cinematic experiences with those characters in the original series and Next Generation, we've had 3 years with them on television with the original series cast. We had 7 years with the Next Generation cast to really to earn. We knew those characters and stuff. Whereas here, in one of the failings of the plot with this film is, if you're going to have end of the universe MacGuffin like the godsend or weapon that they had set up, then we needed more just development with these characters, so that whenever we had the pithy banter going back and forth with where they were literally sometimes cross talking over one another, and the jokes and things that for the humor to work, we needed more to, like, at the beginning of the film, instead of the ham-handed way that they introduced these characters. Just it didn't give me as a viewer anything to grasp onto, so that other than when they started having their bickering and the crosstalk and all that kind of stuff, it felt like nails on a chalkboard sometimes, because it was just like it wasn't earned, and there was no emotional. And don't tell me you can't do that. I've seen movies where you can introduce new characters, um, and have you feel for them in a span of in an hour and a half, 2 hour long movie. So it can be done with a very well constructed story. And unfortunately, as I noted before, this was they took elements from the TV show and just mushed them all together, and a lot of things ended up on the cutting room floor that would have maybe fleshed these characters out over the course of a 10 episode series. We would have felt more about these characters if we had more time with them. See another chat here. Yeah, that's a very good point. For a film about Section 31, it should have been more about moral conflict. Can you do evil things for a good and just cause? Bingo. I mean, that's the at its core is really why this film just falls flat. And as I noted earlier in my review, we've seen that time and time again whenever we've had prior iterations of Section 31. I mean, like, for example, whenever they had used Section 31 to set up the genocidal virus that was going to take out the founders. Of course, Bashir and Sloane, whenever they had their back and forth as far as whatever Bashir thought that Sloane was going to go to, whenever they went to into Arma Assailant Legace, was where Sloane was wanted Bashir to go to Romulus to diagnose whether or not a Romulan senator had or leader had a disease or whatever, and Bashir was worried that um, that Sloane wanted him to like take him out or whatever. And spoiler alerts if you haven't watched these episodes and stuff, I should have said that at the outset. But there's been prior iterations, even in Enterprise, when Malcolm Reed was apparently part of Section 31. He has some moral quandaries with about the organization, and also had some things dealing with the moral questions going back and forth with Archer. Of course, Cisco had it as well, and that was really a big issue with what was part of what was wrong with this film. And then again, like to that point, as I was just referencing that comment, there was in many regards this was a retcon of what we had learned about Section 31 from DS9, and in many ways it's not recognizable from what was told before, and and again, for the organization that was supposed to be so secretive and paint outside the lines and do things that are morally questionable and stuff, I never got that in this film. I mean, like I said earlier, I mean, we've seen established characters do crazy things as far as Cisco, like whenever he was used a metagenic weapon on the Maquis planet that that made it uninhabitable for folks, and I mean, and things like that. I mean, we had nothing of that in this film. That was like, ooh, they may question what's going on from a moral standpoint or whatever. And all, and like I said, I think they gloss over Georgiou's past as well. So yeah, so I think that was some of the failings of the film. Quickly move into some of the characters. And let me, before I move on to that, the other thing too is I put a pin in it earlier, which is a big like big flash as far as like problem. Virgil. Now, anybody who's familiar with the original series knows the characters looking at your screen, the two gentlemen there, Loki and Belli, from Let This Be Your Last Battlefield. This was a race from the planet Charon. Of course, it was a very, Star Trek is always great about telling stories using allegory, and these two characters were the last of their race and ended up annihilating one another because of a big race war that was happening on their planet. And just really to show the craziness of they really explore how racism and every kind of ism is. Today is a Holocaust Remembrance Day as I record this video, and it really paints the picture as far as why this is clearly such a bad thing. But getting into the universe here, we see Virgil, and we, if you're gonna have like member berries, as far as like things from prior iterations of Star Trek, do your homework. I mean, all you had to do was just pull the Star Trek encyclopedia off your shelf, or just go Google, go to Memory Alpha, and like see, put in those characters, and you could have found out that, oh, wait a minute, these people no longer exist. So again, it was one of those member berries that they threw in there. It was like, oh, let's just throw this in there and make it cool for folks. But but it would have been nice, and maybe again, if we had a full season, we would have had an explanation for like why why Virgil, is he a clone? Is he, were there some people who were also, maybe that were not on Charon when they had the wars years ago? So there's a outpost or colony or something like that. It would have been good to have that explanation for why, Virgil was alive and clearly from is from that planet. Hello, Brogu. Thank you for joining us here this evening on this live stream. Yeah, this is really important. that you're yeah, I was just making that point as well. That that was let this episode let this be your last battlefield, if I recall. Yeah, and and it was definitely was, you know, pointing out how silly racism was. I guess it's the to use the parlance of the woke Star Trek episode. I guess that was one of the most woke ones ever. You know, but you know, I think that's good. Really, you know, again, like I said, that was to me when I saw that, I was just like, you know, not that I'm a stick in the mud canon person, but that was a pretty egregious error there. Anyway, moving on. Um, moving on to other things as far as the characters that we got in this film, because I really don't know what to say about them. I mean, again, as I said earlier, it was one of those things where they introduced these new characters, and we really didn't get to know much about them other than being just sort of cartoon characters. There's a funny one, which, you know, was Fez, and you know, I Fez was annoying and more. Fez had the potential to be a great character, a fun character. He was for folks who may forgot, you know, who forgotten which one he was. He was the Vulcan robot that was had the little the thing inside him, and you know, I will go ahead and just say it right now. The where it's 2025, and this film was probably, I think they filmed this in 2023, 24, I believe. Um, we don't need to have stereotypes in for comic foils. It one of the biggest things that pissed me off about, quite frankly, with the very short treks, the animation thing that dropped about a year or so ago, was how it felt like they were punching down on things and punching down on people. And this was one of those situations where, and you know, with the bad Irish accent, or whatever the hell accent that was supposed to be, and then at the end also with the Southern accent. I mean, I live in the South. I mean, it was just like, come on, really? That was just punching down, very lazy writing, you know, very lazy direction, quite frankly, and it just really like it was just grating. So instantly, that anytime that character came on, that was just like demerit. It was, and so you know, so yeah, tell me, you know, you can tell me to lighten up or whatever, but no, this is the show's called Blur Trek, so I'm not going to lighten up about stereotypes and tropes and those kind of things, you know, when at the expense of like punching down on people and stuff like that. It's just not cool. So, um, yeah, so that was Fez, and I'll just, you know, but another big plot hole was like, you know, again, I guess they referenced the autopilot earlier when it had the fight scenes and stuff. But I guess that's how he was able to continue to fight. But again, this is kind of lazy writing. Anyway, um, um, yeah. Also, Mel, another character that was a member berry. She was a Deltan, and of course they referenced the sexual. For folks who aren't familiar with Deltans, they are a race that's very sexually progressive, very open about their sexuality and those kind of things. And and they again they play it for just, you know, play it for, I won't say laughs, but it was just sort of like the it was just like she was just sort of there, you know, and then of course she was on the first character. I think the first character to get off in the team, and so, you know, so again, some kind of bad tropes that went that was going on there. You know, with her character, Garrett. So that was another member berry for folks, and also a selling point that was a part of this film. Many folks, again, the Lost Era was, you know, whenever we heard the name Rachel Garrett, for anybody who's a fan of the Next Generation, folks remember her as, and she's the character in the Master Maroon. There, she was played by Trisha O'Neill. She was captain of the Enterprise C, and the Enterprise C had a very instrumental role in the following of the conflict between the Klingons and the Federation, because the Enterprise C came to the defense of a Klingon outpost when the Romulans were attacking it. And so I was very excited, to see that they had, a character that was introduced in Next Generation, going to be a part of here and get some more about her backstory and stuff. But again, from the character that we saw in yesterday's Enterprise and Next Generation, and the character that we saw in this film was I don't see how the character that we were introduced in this film grew into be that starship captain later. It just didn't, if you're going up again, if you're I'm always of the opinion whenever you're using legacy characters or legacy, they need to have a purpose in the story beyond just having the cool name. That's one of the great things, for example, that Star Wars has done with Andor. I mean, whenever they have things show up, it has a purpose, and that's one of the, I can't stand member berries that have no purpose in a story other than just to be like, oh, it's a cool moment just to have something thrown up there. No, it needs to have a purpose for drawing the story forward. Why are you having this character in here just beyond just having a name drop? So I didn't feel like they did a good. They underutilized the potential for Garrett, and also showing how that this young lieutenant, and then of course we learned at the end of the movie, as she was promoted to lieutenant commander, became captain of the Enterprise down the line. I just didn't. There was nothing there that like made me feel like, oh yeah, I could see her being the Rachel Garrett that we saw, you know, in a few, maybe half, not even half an episode with yesterday's Enterprise being that, forceful type of character and stuff. So, those are things about that. The mech dude was, I can't remember his name. So Chad, if you could remind me of his name. Um, he, there was a lot of potential for that particular character too. I know he dealt with a lot of body dysphoria issues. And again, I think they played it for laughs. And again, this is Star Trek, and just, some of the problems here is I think why a lot of people are having problems with this show and this movie is not so much that it was trying to do something different. I think it was sort of like some of the, not only they fumbled the ball as far as some of the moral questions, and the moral issues of an organization like Section 31. It was completely glossed over. They didn't really touch on it at all. But I think another thing too is I think this movie missed out on the ethos and the ethics of what Star Trek aspires to do. And as I talked about just here on this review earlier, some of the punching down on stereotype people, and using bad stereotypes like bad accents, or making jokes of as far as like the mech dude, his clearly, I think I saw somewhere that someone theorized, maybe in Trek culture, Sean, theorized possibly that, maybe he was disabled or something like that, and he needed this suit to be able to live and to have a functioning life. So again, it just, those are the kind of things that, like, why with this character wasn't like, what was off-putting, I guess, as far as how they treated things. And then Quasi, the Kamaloid, he was just basically there to just drop exposition. I mean, he was just like, C spot, run, and he just he was a okay character. He was fine, but okay, he was fine. I don't have anything truly negative to say about him. He was just sort of there. And then last, there was the leader of the group, I think Echo. He was augment. Again, enough with the augments, because yeah, that's just overused thing in Star Trek at this point. We've seen of course, the OG augment with, of course, is Khan. But we have Lon Noonien Singh and Strange Worlds. We've seen augments in Enterprise, and so let's put a pause on any more augments, as we deal with, as we move forward. Zeph, yes, thank you. Yes, the mech dude's name was Zeph. Thanks. Hey, Jeff, it's good to see you. And I appreciate you with the assist there. Jeff's one of our listeners on our podcast. But yeah, so yeah, that was something I just, like I said, that was something I just really um, didn't appreciate some of the things that they did with these characters. And again, they were trying to like flesh, they introduced these characters, and then they just didn't give us a reason to like root for this team. And then also, as I noted before with Georgiou, I think trying to do this redemption arc with her character. And I mean, let's remember, I mean, this was a character who like um, ate Saru. I mean, so when she was a cannibal, I guess they did try to touch on that a little bit when she was eating an eyeball earlier in the episode. So the movie, I did watch the film twice just to like make sure I got try to get as many things of the things with have. Oh, let's see. Got another comment here. I think the makers of the show thought that all they needed to do was get some great actors like Michelle Yeoh and Omari Hardwick and throw them in a Star Trek show, and things were just going to work out. Yeah, yeah. I mean, credit to the cast. I mean, I'm not going to dunk on the actors. I mean, they all did tremendous work with what they were given. I mean, I think it's the old saying, if it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage. And I mean, and unfortunately, it just wasn't on the page. And we got a very frustrating hour and a half that has a Star Trek label on it. I mean, I kind of joked somewhere. I was like, somewhere Star Trek 5 is popped to champagne cork. Is it the worst Star Trek film? I don't want to be prisoner of the moment. I really just need to go back and just watch them all, and just to really. I mean, it's down in the lower third for sure. I mean, it's down there with Nemesis. At least my personal films that I feel are the weakest ones. As far as, of course, Final Frontier, Insurrection. Uh, I know some people have said Beyond. Actually, I like Beyond. As far as the Kelvin movies, Beyond is actually, I kind of like that one. Uh, 2009, I really do like as far as the Kelvin movies. But the Into Darkness again, I think had some. Basically was trying to do a retelling of Wrath of Khan, but I digress. Let me stick to this. As I get close here to, and I'm gonna probably wrap it up here in a few minutes, but a couple other things I wanted to just hit on too is just, as I mentioned before, the score. Jeff Russo typically does a really solid job. I mean, hell, I have a Strange New Worlds theme on my my Spotify like workout list, but I just felt that this was um, the I thought the score was fine. I mean, it wasn't memorable. I thought the Alexander Courage utilization of it in this film, especially where they used it there towards the end, was completely out of place. I guess again, it was just like a member berry. It's like, oh, just remember we're in Star Trek. And they did throw plenty of things out there as far as just like, if you're a Star Trek fan, you'll pick up on those notes, but it wasn't anything that it just given that theme, so iconic thing that Alexander Courage composed for the original series, it just didn't fit in this show, in this film. Sorry, I keep saying show. I mean, I know it was a film, but I just felt like it was a sort of like Insurrection felt to me like a Next Generation show episode. This one felt like a movie of the week kind of felt vibe to it as well. That's just my opinion. Speaking of the action was really good, but Star Trek has never been about action. The action, honestly, I have to disagree. I think the fight, the fight scenes and stuff were really, really. They didn't. You have Michelle Yeoh. You have Michelle Yeoh, and I just it drove me crazy when they were doing the fight scenes. And they like close up on it instead of letting the scene breathe. I mean, if you're gonna have those, it felt claustrophobic, quite frankly, as far as some of the fight choreography. I think the fight choreography was very pedestrian in this, quite frankly. And I mean, I know she's older and stuff, but she's still Michelle freaking Yeoh. And we know, I mean, with who did films with Jackie Chan and of course Crouching Tiger and other things. And yeah, I just felt that again they just didn't allow her you know, be a she's supposed to be a badass, but I couldn't see it because they put the camera too damn close whenever they were doing the fight choreography. So this felt like the fights were not well shot, and then also I thought the action and stuff. We all saw the clear VR wall when they were going out that tunnel and stuff. I mean, you know, again, the VR wall just takes me out of things. I would have just to go back to practical effect or a blend of good practical and actual instead of the VR wall because I just it's just overused and yeah, I'm ranting now, but I just thought that I thought it was just very underwhelming. I've seen better things on some of the shows, but um, yeah, but that was it. Overall. Oh, yeah, another comment here. One of my favorites is Wrath of Khan. As far as new movers, I did enjoy the 2009 Star Trek. Yeah, I agree. Both of those are like my start. Yeah, of course, Wrath of Khan's obviously my all time favorite as far as in the Star Trek. And I know there was, I know JJ. There are a lot of people. I like 2009. There's pieces of it that now that I don't rock with it as much as I used to. I don't know if it's because I'm getting older and just getting more. I think there was this. It's sort of like the problem I had. It's. I think sometimes when I looked at the 2009, it's sort of like it's the Jim the stereotypes of like Kirk. I think as far as with 2009, I mean, I do like it. I mean, it really is a good film, and I think clearly the shadow of the 2009 permeates, and then especially I think Kurtzman, if I recall, was a part of the creative team with the 2009 film. I think he may have either wrote it or was on the production team. So yeah, so that vibe from 2009 has clearly moved forward with these with the new Trek as far as 2000 from the Kurtzman era of Star Trek. Um, yeah, 2009 is probably the best. It's probably the Star Trek property that has the least idea how big space is. Yeah, there were some moments there that did feel a little claustrophobic too. I think that's one of the things I think with the whole new Trek, some of the cinematography and stuff with those films. Because I know as much as I, for example, loved season 3 of Star Trek Picard. A lot of times it was just very dark. I mean, I think if I recall, they even had a situation where they um, even Terry Matalas was like, was tweeting about like how dark it was, and not dark as far as like the story, but just it has some dark moments too, but just the lighting and everything as far as it just was very dark and very claustrophobic, and so I think that is a thing of some of the new Trek. I know Strange New Worlds has gotten better about that. I feel like it is bigger and more grand, and I think they've learned to, because I think Discovery used a lot of the AR wall, and the director of this film. Section 31 he's directed some of the best episodes of Discovery. I have to say, I mean, I think, but maybe this was one of those ones where I think whether it's an editing bay or something like that, and as I noted before, just having to convert this film and from a film to a TV show to a film, a lot of things got lost in translation. Let's see, another comment. Enjoyed the Star Trek from Brogu. I enjoyed the 2009 Star Trek because it was a decent reboot of the franchise, if you know what I mean. Yeah, it was. It was. I mean, and even the Force Awakens. If we're going to go over to the Star Wars side of the house, for folks who Star Trek and Star Wars fans can like both. And yeah, I mean, yes, Force Awakens was. Let's just call it for what it is. It was a you know, it was basically a New Hope. Let's just be honest. It was. So, um, but but at the same time, it did reboot the franchise, and it did make, and it did show that in the 21st century, Star Trek can be a viable property again. And I think as I wrap up, I mean, I think that's one of the things that I'm really hopeful that I know fan reaction has been mixed. Obviously, as I noted earlier, there has been, as far as if you go by the tomato meter or even IMDb. I mean, if I had to give this movie a score, I would probably say probably 4.5 out or 5 out of 10. I mean, this is where my head is. So, with all the gripes and stuff, I really wanted to like this film, and I really felt let down by it, quite frankly. And I think that's where a lot of people are at this point, because we've been so starved for a Star Trek film that when we finally get it, and then we get it with, that this felt very rushed and just slapdashed and slapped together, that it on my thumbnail, is it really that bad? I think it may be, some people out there may be overreacting. As prisoner, we're all sometimes prisoners of the moment. Like I said, I watched it twice. I will say it was very, to be fair, I watched it twice, because I was like, okay, my first reaction was I was like I even told my wife as we were watching it, I was like, this is like dollar store Mission Impossible. Um, but I watched it again, and it was still a slog to get through. But I did see some elements that I was like, okay, it was, there were some elements there that worked. I think at the end of the day, though, as I said, as many of you noted here in the chat, and also as I said, I mean, it didn't. I think it fell because it didn't. It missed the point of what Section 31 is. Two, I think, Giorgio is a genocidal ruler who was, who they try to do a redemption arc for. And sometimes characters just aren't supposed to be redeemed. I mean, look at the Penguin. I mean, it's a show that we talked about here on our podcast. And I mean, it's one of those, and I guess maybe that was sort of the vibe they were trying to go for. It's like, yes, we know she's a bad person, but we're going to try to make her likable and make, and a lot of that is just the sheer force of Michelle Yeoh as an actress. And I think people just have a good vibe and a good feeling towards her as an actress. And so, so I think that's part of like some of the good vibes that people, who do like this film are really, riding off of, because when you look at the character itself and not the actress, I mean, the character itself is a very terrible character who, honestly, we don't want to be rooting for, like, for them. And I think that, and then again, as I said in my review tonight, the redemption arc that they tried to do just wasn't earned. So whenever you get to the end of the film and they're like all sitting around chummy, drinking, at the bar and stuff, it just wasn't, it just wasn't earned. I mean, there was nothing. There was nothing in the hour and a half that whenever we saw that character introduced, who killed her family, to like, and then also, and then they had this contrived love story between her and San, which was not believable at all. There was nothing there. There was nothing done in that span of the film that really showed how this character evolved, and how, how this character was redeemed in any way that would make me cheer for her, or to be like the lovable anti-hero. I mean, there just wasn't. And so I think that's part of the problem that I have with this film. It's just a very underbaked and just very underthought film. And maybe if we had 10 episodes of a series, maybe we would have gotten that, and we would have gotten there. Even like, and like I said, I think we got to that in some degree with how the character evolved in Star Trek Discovery, which they completely like didn't even acknowledge in this film at all. So those are some of the things I thought were prop were big problems with this film, and it was just too much for, at least for me. And it was too much for to overcome for me. Now, like I said, I know plenty of you really enjoyed it, but I'm not. It was a disappointment. It was, yeah, Banjo Man. It was a made for TV movie quality. Yeah, yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, definitely was a made for TV movie. Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, but that's appreciate everyone jumping here on the chat, and those are my just to close the things out. I think the this film was a major missed opportunity. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully we'll get some. It doesn't end the line for Star Trek films on streaming. I mean, because for example, this whenever we saw in another big IP with Star Wars when they tried to do some of these one-off films. I think after Solo and how it was not well received. I mean, it still made a boatload of money, but I think critically and fan wise, it was kind of it's fine. And I think hopefully we don't see that happen with Star Trek where I know Kurtzman has said that he wants to make, he still plans on doing some streaming films, and I hope that the reaction to this particular film doesn't end that. Of course, we do have season 3 of Strange New Worlds coming out this year. The Starfleet Academy show is in production. They're filming now. Most probably, I think best case if it comes out at the end of this year, but more likely than not, we're looking at probably 2026 when it comes out. So hopefully that series will be good. I know it is another spinoff of Discovery, because it is set in that timeline. So we do have that, and of course we do have another season of section of a Strange New World season 4. So it's also in production. Thanks for coming, Brogu. This is the way. Yes, it is. So we have that. Yeah, it's a great point. Would have been cool if Joe's character died and they left it open ended to be a pilot for a TV series since Joe isn't coming back. Yeah, that's a good point too. I mean, there's definitely different ways they could have gone with this. And it provides mistakes. Because the way they kind of teased it, the ending kind of left open the door for another film for this character. And if it happens, I don't know. A lot of more people probably want, Star Trek Legacy as far as carrying on the story from season 3 of Picard. But I, we'll see what happens with the Academy shows and stuff. But as this is to close it out though. I do think that this was a missed opportunity, and hopefully next time around they will have a more cohesive story and characters that we care about, and just and just I think there is space for more Star Trek films. I know hopefully we'll get I know there's the one that is a prequel to the what we know as far as in the Prime universe that we are going to get, I guess, set between the period between Enterprise and the events that we saw were the divergent the timelines with in 2009 Star Trek, and also and maybe at some point the Kelvin crew will come back as well if they can ever get a story put together for that. But if you've seen the film, I know a lot of you here in the chat have clearly watched it. Thanks for your contributions tonight here on this live stream. I definitely enjoyed hearing your thoughts on it. And if you didn't catch the live stream, but watched the film and would love to hear your thoughts, and please drop a comment in the comment section below. And also again, we are the Scene Nerd podcast. So if have had our website going here on the little crawl throughout the stream, you can find us at www.scenernerdpodcast.com. You can find us on all the socials. We're on Threads, Blue Sky, Twitter, still Facebook, Instagram. So we would definitely love for you to subscribe. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. So drop a like on this video. It helps with the algorithm to get it out there, and definitely subscribe to our podcast. My partner Sarah Belmont and I will be back later this week. We are going to be discussing the new series on Hulu called Paradise. And if you've seen some of my social comments out there, definitely, at least from my perspective, we actually both really enjoyed it. So we're looking forward to talking about the first two episodes. The first episode dropped this past Sunday night. And then the remaining two episodes are dropping on Tuesday this week. And then we'll be discussing it um, on Thursday night to drop our podcast on Friday to discuss, with our thoughts about Paradise, which stars Sterling K. Brown from This Is Us, and it's also was developed by Dan Fogelman, who was also behind This Is Us. And again, the pilot episode, all this little spoiler alert, really really enjoyed it, and I'm hooked on that series already. But with that, thank you all for joining us. Be sure to subscribe, like, comment, and I'll be back with another Blur Trek. I'll probably have another episode probably in the next couple of weeks, working through like some ideas as far as some additional ones. But if you want to go check out some of my previous Scene Nerd Blur Trek episodes, you can do so right here on YouTube. We have a playlist, and the most recent one I did prior to this one was my thoughts on whether or not Deep Space Nine needed a movie. So speaking of Section 31, but again, thank you so much for watching, and with that, live long and prosper.